But when Barbara and I got saved, we got saved in about a 14-week revival. That was unheard of. And people were driving off the road. They were coming out from the church, coming up from Louisville somewhere, and they would drive, Brother Nelson, they just drive by and stop. And never been in the church before, no relationship with anybody in the church, totally strange people come in the church and come to the front and ask for prayer for their families. That went on for, I don't know, 14 weeks. But the first night that revival opened up, Barbara and I gave our heart to the Lord. And doing that, the next day or two, we was going to Campbellsville for some reason. And I was praying for Barbara because I knew God had touched her, but in my heart I felt like she needed something else. She needed God to move in another direction there. And I was praying for her driving down the road. And I looked over out of the corner of my eyes and tears were running down Barbara's eyes. And she's sitting over there crying. And I said, Lord, just touch her. Whatever it takes, just touch her. And God touched her. And a few minutes later, Barbara looked over at me. She said, you're going to have to quit praying for me. And doing that, I realized God was real. He's real. You know, He wasn't only touching my heart, but He was touching her heart. You know, and I come to realize right then, Brother Nelson, God is a real God. And, you know, and little things like that all through my life with God, He's always showed me things that He was real. And, you know, we was up here, I testified just a little bit, give these girls a little bit of a break. And they know it, I've testified before, but we was up here, Barbara works up in Danville a lot. And she called me one morning, I was going to work. And I was going up to Lancaster to work, do a job up there. I had my old work clothes on and everything, and she called and she said, will you stop by the hospital and pray for this lady? I said, I will. And as I was going to the hospital, God started ministering to me about Lazarus. How He brought Lazarus from dead out of the tomb, and God touched him. And I didn't realize what God was trying to say to me. And I didn't realize what He was going to do either. And so we got to the hospital, and even going up the elevator and going upstairs, and God kept going over that scripture over and over and over. And we got up in the room, and they'd already pulled the curtain. The lady there, she's about 70 years old, had never been to church, had never been saved, lived a pretty rough life, and they'd already pulled the curtain on her where they just said she was passing. She's going to die. And as I stood there with the family, and she had a son there with them, and I was praying under my breath, not saying anything out loud, and trying to comfort the family. And they were in there trying to cut the rings off of her fingers, doing everything to get her prepared for death. And I stood there a few minutes, and I started to go over and pray for her and lay my hands on her and pray for her. And the Lord said, no, not now. Wait just a minute. So I went back over, stood beside the window there in the hospital, and just stood there. And then probably about 15 minutes or so, God said, now you go pray for her. So I made a step over, 2 or 3 steps over, got over beside the son. Didn't know what God was going to do yet. And as I stood there and I laid my hand on that lady, and God said, wait a minute, I got a message. I said, what is it, Lord? He said, you tell that son and the family that I'm going to do a miracle in the mother in 3 days. I said, Lord, am I hearing you right? Am I hearing this right? Am I getting this right, God? He said, you speak it. So I was up there, and the son was standing there beside him. I said, Gary, I said, I can't, I said, I got to tell you something. I said, I've never done this before, but God has spoken to my heart. He needs you to hear it. He said, what is it? I said, God said He's going to do a miracle in your mother in 3 days. And He said, it's going to be a miracle. And he looked at me real funny and kind of shook it off. Well, I went on and prayed for the lady, a little calm prayer, and nothing exciting happened, nothing just the Spirit of God was just ministering through the room, and nothing exciting happening. And I prayed for her and walked out, went to work. And some reason it slipped my mind. That whole episode slipped my mind. God took it away for some reason. And on the third day, I pulled in my driveway and Barbara had the phone in her hand. She said, "Somebody needs to talk to you right now." I said, "Oh." I said, "Who is this?" Gary. I said, "Oh." And then right then, God started bringing everything back. I said, "What in the world?" So I went and got the phone. I said, "What is it, buddy?" He said, "I got to tell you something." He said, "My mother's living. She woke up this morning and she asked for chicken noodle soup. And she lived for almost 2 years longer before she passed to be with the Lord. But she got saved. She was in the hospital. Everybody walked in her room. She testified about Jesus, saved her soul. We traveled. She went to a nursing home in Danville. We went up there and spent time with her. Months and months and months went on till she passed. See, God's real. God will, He'll look in, even when the doctors give up on you. When your family gives up on you. Sometime when the church gives up on you. God will still intervene. He will heal you. He will take care of you. That's what I said. He'll wipe out all the problems in your life. I'm not saying you won't have problems. I'm not saying that. Don't think that. But all those sinful problems, He'll wipe out of your life. He'll clean you up. He'll set you up on that rock, up on that foundation. And He'll make a new person out of you. And that's what He did with that lady there. He made a totally 100% new person out of that lady. And I thought, my God, only God. Only God. Doctors couldn't do nothing. They didn't give up. Man doesn't give up. They couldn't even get a preacher to come in her room to pray for her. Wouldn't do it. Because she had such a bad name. See, we have to be careful. When God calls you to do something, you need to be ready to do it. Whether you see anything in there or you don't see anything in it. Just remember one thing. God is in control of all things.